Hey everyone, I'm back with another quick guide. Today we're going to be taking a look at setting up a quick game with PyGame using Python tools for Visual Studio. So we have a little bit to cover, so I'm going to dive right in. The first thing we were going to do is we're going to go and set up Visual Studio if we haven't already. So the good thing about the Python tools for Visual Studio is it works with VS Community Edition 2013. It works for Express 2013 for the web, and Express Edition 2013 for the desktop, and of course it will work with all VS Ultimate Editions 2010 to 2013. So you have some variety there. A few of them are free. The one that I'm going to use today is the Community Edition 2013. So here I am at the Python Tools for Visual Studio website. Don't worry, I'll make sure the link is in the video notes. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to download this first. So I'm going to click download. This is going to ask me to save it. I'm just going to save it to my desktop just so I know where it is. So we'll go save desktop. And that's going to go ahead and download. Now the second thing that we need to download is PyGame. Now the reason I'm going to download PyGame before I install or download a Python interpreter is I want to pick which version of PyGame I want to use, and depending on the version that I pick, it'll ask for a different version of the interpreter. So in this case, the one that I'm going to use today is PyGame 1.9.2 AO for Windows 32, and it uses Python 3.2. So that's the last one here on the list. I'm just going to select that. And again, it's going to ask me if I want to save it, and I'll just save it to my desktop like I did the last one. So that takes care of our PyGame and the version that we need there. So like I mentioned, I wanted to make sure that I knew what version of Python I wanted. So let's go ahead and download that now. So here I'm going to download my Python release, and I want to make sure I pick the Windows x86 MSI installer. And I'm just going to save that to my desktop. So there we go. That's all the tools we need to download to get started. So let's start going through the process of installing them. So the first one that I'm going to install is my Python. So I'm going to install Python, the 3.2.5 version that I downloaded. I'm just going to install it for all users. I'm going to make sure that it puts it in my C drive. This is because most Python libraries or add-ons that you use are going to look for it there. That's just kind of the default, so I'm just going to leave it where it is. After a few moments, that'll go ahead and install Python for us. Alright, so now that we have Python installed, let's go ahead and install our PyGame. So we'll double-click PyGame here. The same thing, it's just going to ask us, you want to install for all users. Okay, so after we've gone through that, our PyGame is now installed. And we'll just click Finish. And the final thing that we have to install is our PTVS, which is our Python tools for Visual Studio. So let's double-click that one. And it just asks you if you accept the license. We're all good with that. We'll select it, and it's just going to go through and install. This shouldn't take too long at all. Okay, so after a short period of time, that'll go ahead and install, and that's it. That's our Python tools installed for Visual Studio. So now we're ready to go ahead and get started with actually building the little game framework. So let's click Finish here. And now I'm going to open up Visual Studio. So I'm just going to go to my start screen here and type in Visual Studio. And there's my Visual Studio 2013. Alright, so with Visual Studio is now up and running here, we're going to go to New Project. So we'll go File, New, Project. And you'll notice now in our drop-down, I'll just close Visual Basic there, you'll notice that Python is now included. And that's because our Python tools adds a bunch of templates to create Python apps. So if we select that drop-down, you'll notice you have a bunch of different options here. Ones that use Iron Python, Flask, whatever it might be. I'm not going to go into detail about which each one does. If you're looking for a little bit more in-depth overview of it, check out the Python Tools for Visual Studio website. They have some great documentation there. So in our case, we're just going to create a simple Python application. So we'll select that. And I'm just going to call this one PyGame Quick Start. And if we hit OK, that's going to go ahead and create a default project for us. So this is just a quick default project. As you can see, it's got Hello World. If we were to run it right now, it's just going to pop up in a window that says Hello World. So just do that real quick, and you'll see now it just says Hello World, pressing a key to continue, and we press a button and it just closes out. So just a very simple framework, does all the heavy lifting in the back end for us, so we don't have to worry about it. So let's get started and actually build this out and use PyGame to display a simple sprite on the screen. Basically the starting point of any video game, if you will. So before we add code, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a resource for our image. So I'm just going to go to Add, where I'm going to right click on the solution, click Add. I'm going to go to Existing Item, and you'll find the image that I'm going to use, which is just the Windows 8.1 logo inside the PyGame Quick Start folder. Again, I'll make sure that the download link is in the video notes. So if you just go inside here, so I'm just going to scroll through here real quick, and got to make sure that I have all files selected, not just Python files. And we'll find our image right here. It's Windows 8.1 bitmap image. And we'll go ahead and we'll add that to our solution. So that'll be the resource that we're going to display, our sprite that we want to display. Okay. So now let's go ahead and add the code to make all this work. So the first thing we'll do is we'll remove this print hello world line. And we're going to start with our imports. So we'll do import. We'll do system. So this will bring in our system library. And then we'll bring in our PyGame library as well. Right after that, trying to autocomplete for me. Doesn't need to. There we go. So now, right after our import line, we're going to initialize PyGame. So we'll do PyGame.init. And then below that, we're going to create a variable called size. And this is going to basically determine the size of our window that we're going to use to display our game. And I'm just going to give it a default size of 800 by 480. Then we're going to create another variable called white, and we're going to define this as a tuple, which is basically just the RPG values to give us the white color, so that we can use that to clear the screen and give us a white background. Okay, so after that, the next thing that we want to do is we want to set our screen size for PyGame. So we'll go screen, and we will say PyGame.display .set.mode. Make sure that it's set mode, not dot mode, it's set underscore mode, so make sure we have that right. Okay, and then we're going to pass in the variable size. So this will create a screen display set size for us of 800 by 480, which is basically the window that we're going to have to display our game in. Alright, so after that, let's tell it about the image that we want to display. So we'll call it logo. And we'll say load our image, so image.load, and we're going to pass in the image we want it to load. In this case, it's that resource that we imported on the last step there, Windows 8.1 BMP for bitmap. And that'll load in our sprite. Now we're going to tell it where we want it to display that sprite. So we'll create a new rectangle, and we will say create the rectangle using these settings. So it'll be get rec, and this will basically create a rectangle the size of the image that we loaded it in. Now for the fun part. Now we have to create a game loop. So we're going to do this very, very simple. We'll use a while loop, and we'll say while 1, and then we'll do a quick little event check. And we're going to do this to check to see whether or not the game has been exited. So we'll say for event in PyGame. This is basically going to loop through all of the events that are happening in our event, or in our game, sorry. And this will autocomplete beat me to the punch there. So there we go. So that's just basically going to say for every event in PyGame's event list, we're going to look to see, so we'll say if the event type, so event.type, is the event type of quit, so pygame.quit, we'll just do a quick system.exit call. So what this will do is if someone decides to exit the game, we'll see the event happen, and then in our loop we'll say, okay, we'll just quit out of the game. So that gives us a way to exit the game so we don't have an infinite loop condition. So now inside of our loop, the next thing that we want to do is we're going to basically fill the background of the screen, so clear the screen if you will, and we'll do that by saying screen.fill, and we'll pass in our variable white, which is just the RPG color code. So 255 by 255, 255. So that there will just make a screen completely white. So now what we want to do is go ahead and add our actual image. So just a couple of things to make that happen. We'll say screen.glit, which is the command to display our sprite, and we'll say logo, and then we'll pass in the place that we want to put it, which is our logo rect, which is just the rectangle that we created, the size of our logo. And finally, we'll just do one last call to flip the image display. So pygame.display flip, flip, and there we go. That's all the code we need to actually display this. So if we go ahead and hit start now, I'll click that, and if everything worked according to plan, you'll see our PyGame window open up and it display our sprite that we passed in. So very simple, kind of like the hello world, if you will, getting started here. But yeah, hopefully you found this enjoyable. You learned a little something, and it's going to help you with your building games with Python. So thank you very much, and happy coding.